Welcome to a ride on the outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the MMA Outsiders. It is episode 82, and it looks a little bit different this week. I'm Zain Bando. To my right is Brett Cagle, and below me is Pat Nana, and we have a lot to talk about today, including a recap of which was UFC 301, as well as Canelo Alvarez from Las Vegas, and of course, we have a lot of previewing to do as UFC St. Louis takes place on Saturday. There's a bunch of fights on that card, and so much more. But before we get into everything and so much more as well, we'd like to remind you to please like and subscribe to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at youtube.com/ETB Network, as we're slowly but surely approaching 1,000 subscribers over there. So if you like the show and you like the content that you see today from us at the MMA Outsiders, as well as everywhere else across the network, please go in and do so. And if you turn on notifications, you won't be able to miss a single moment. And so much more. And be sure to follow us across social media at MMA Outsiders ETB. You can get all of our content there, including exclusive clips from every single episode, and of course our weekly picks from all of our hosts. So it'd be greatly appreciated. As I just alluded to before, my name is Zain Bando. I'm a combat sports journalist for a couple of different places, including BJPen.com and MMA Knockout. You can find my work across social media at Zain Bando 99. And I guess we're gonna move right along. Pat, where can people find you on a daily basis?
I'm at Patrick Dana MMA or Pat Dana MMA on social media, and I'm a Combat Sports UK journalist. Also do work for ETB Network. Obviously, I'm doing a basketball stream later tonight. T-Wolves, baby, T-Wolves versus Nuggets. So get to watch game 2, and yeah,
absolutely. And then
how about you, Brett?
Brett, you're joining us for the first time in place of Tom. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Brett_Cagle on Twitter. I'm a radio host for SportsTownChicago.com on Tuesdays. I host a boxing and MMA show called The Combat Connection. I'll have Zain on there tomorrow at 3 o'clock Central Time, live on Twitch. And then I also contribute here for Empty the Bench with the Best Bets segment. And also I contribute a weekly blog. So do a little bit of writing, a little bit of hosting, and I'm happy to be here with you guys today.
Absolutely. We have so much to get to on what we thought was going to be a lighter week in the combat sports world, but it ended up being anything but that. So are you guys ready? Are you guys ready to do this thing or what?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Let's get to it.
All right, let's get right into it. So we had UFC 301, which took place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil this past Saturday, and we had an end still. We had Alexandre Pantoja in the main event, winning a unanimous decision over Steve Erceg in what many people felt was a very, very close fight. There were scorecards all over the place. I guess to kick this thing off, there were a lot of criticisms going on around this card. There were a lot of people that said they weren't going to watch this card because it wasn't very top heavy. There were a lot of people that said that they were going to strictly watch boxing just because Canelo was there, with it being Cinco de Mayo weekend and everything. So I guess people were getting into the actual main event itself. What did you guys think of the card overall, and do you guys think it exceeded expectations? Because I certainly thought it did.
You can go first, Brett.
Yeah, so I tweeted out that this flyweight main event for the championship was the most intrigued and excited I've been for a flyweight title fight since Demetrius Johnson versus Henry Cejudo 2. I really just like the stylistic matchup in this one. Erceg is a good grappler. Pantoja is a great grappler, but Erceg has that power in his hands. And, he was really technical on Saturday night, and he put on a good performance. It was 2-2, in my opinion, going into the 5th round. He noted in the post-fight interview that he made a mistake that cost him the fight. I believe that going for the takedown in the last 30 seconds there cost him the fight. And he was 30 seconds away from becoming a world champion. So that's something he's going to have to think about. But I think Steve Erceg is one of these guys that is going to be plug and play against the top in the division. He can go in main event fight night cards and then also be on these pay-per-view main cards as well. So he's probably 1 or 2 wins from getting back into contention.
Yeah, I mean, It's an outstanding fight, and you could tell that both guys left it all in there in the octagon, which is what you love to see. But the one thing about this fight that just really disappointed me was Erzeg's lack of urgency, if you will, in rounds 4 and 5. If he would have done a little bit more, I think he could have edged Pantoja on it. He's one of the judges' scorecards, maybe even 2. But I just think Pantoja overall was better. He pushed the pace more. There was more action, and I think if Erceg would have slowed down on the little mistakes, it would have been a much more interesting fight, and he may have potentially had a draw there at the end. And I just think it's one of those things where Erceg is so young, he's so green in the sport. He's now 3-1 in the UFC. He has so much time to really sit back and reflect on what he could have done better. And I mean, honestly, I think right now you could do the rematch if you wanted to. As he's still out there, you got Alex Perez, who just got a big win a couple weeks ago. There are options at flyweight, but at the very least, we now know that Steve Erceg, it was no pushover. It was a good fight, and I'm excited to see where these two go from here, because I don't think it'll be the last these two are going to be fighting each other.
My big question is, I wonder how much Steve Erceg moves up in the rankings, because you have to expect him to move up a bit in the rankings following a performance like that. He was number 10 and he nearly beat the champion. So I wonder if he'll move up to number 5. I wonder if he'll move up just number 8. I really wonder how the rankings panelists are going to feel about his win and not his loss, because it was one of the more impressive losses we've seen in a bit. Like Brett said, about the last 30 seconds to a minute, he had that fight, and then that takedown really kind of sealed the deal for Pantoja when Erceg just completely failed on that takedown attempt. It was kind of a low IQ move, but it's something you kind of expect out of someone that's just 3-0 in the UFC. So as he grows and gets better, I really could see him potentially being a champion one day, or at the very least fighting for that belt again.
Yeah. It's very rare that we see guys fight for the title and lose, and they would also move up in the rankings. So, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And speaking of Brazilians that performed very well in the co-main event of the evening, we had Jose Aldo returning after a couple of years. It is from MMA, taking on Jonathan Martinez, who was on his 6-fight win streak. And Brett, you were super high on this fight. You thought that Martinez could do enough to win. Unfortunately, he didn't. I guess I'm going to start with you, since you were all over this fight from the jump. What do you think Aldo was able to do to exploit Martinez? And do you think that Martinez just got a little bit too overconfident?
Yeah, I don't know if it was overconfidence. I think it might have been lack of confidence. He came in there, and I don't think he really believed in his skill set. I think that the crowd, the hostile, they were chanting Aldo, Aldo. And I don't know if that really played a factor to him, but that's something that Jonathan Martinez hadn't experienced. And when he was on this 6-fight win streak and fighting guys like Said Nurmagomedov, and Adrian Yanez, he hadn't fought people that were, as experienced as Jose Aldo, who had been in those 5-round, pay-per-view headliners and in these huge, massive spots. And I think that the moment really caught up with Martinez in this one. I didn't see that coming. I thought that he was a more polished prospect than what he showed on Saturday night. The leg kick game that he's been known for, Jose Aldo checked that in the first round, and we really only saw, 3 or 4 leg kicks with damaging intent from Martinez in those first 2 rounds. So, I think that his game plan kind of got thrown out the window, and then, Jose Aldo took over, and, he won all 3 rounds. So this was really a shutout and a great performance, a comeback performance from Jose Aldo. I'm interested to see where he gets ranked. I know there was a little bit of talk of him jumping the line. I don't know about that. I'd like to see him matched up against Henry Cejudo in a Legends matchup of striker versus grappler. I think that'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Jose Aldo, like, he came back like he never left. And you always love to see that. Like, it's very rare that fighters take a break. And I know he was boxing. I know he was doing other things. But it's so rare that fighters take a break and then come back the same fighter they were before they left. And nothing. It didn't look like he missed a beat. He looked like the same old, awesome Jose Aldo. And it was amazing to see. I mean, shutout performance, 130-27 on all 3 scorecards. I don't think anyone had it much different than that. And put the exclamation point on the fight by rocking Martinez in that 3rd round and just capitalizing on all the moments he needed to. He was landing some massive shots with his hands. I guess the boxing really has refined his striking in a sense.
Yeah.
No, he looked tremendous with his hands.
Yeah, and it was just something that I wasn't entirely sure how he would look. But and as you guys just alluded to, he didn't miss a beat. The big question now is this was, according to what some very prominent journalists in the media said, he took this fight just to finish out his UFC contract, and he was going to go in and do other things, I guess, before we wrap up and move on to the next one. Do you guys think that this was one where he was just trying to fight out his contract, or do you guys think that he's going to be in the UFC for the long haul, competing at the highest level of bantamweight?
Well, as a competitor, and he is a world champion level competitor and has been to the mountaintop, I think that he'd want to take one last shot there. I think he probably thinks that after this performance, he just beat a 30-year-old who's ranked 12th in the world and beat him decisively and handily. I think that he probably is going to want one more run.
Yeah, I mean, Martinez was on a 6-fight win streak coming into this fight, and Aldo handled him. Like, he handled him with no problem. So, as much as I want to say, like, it would be awesome for Aldo to go out on a big win like this, I don't know how you do, just because it still seems like he has so much left in the tank. And I might even favor him in a fight against a guy like Henry Cejudo, knowing how good his takedown defense is. So that's something that I think is really interesting, and I really just don't think it's time for Aldo to go yet.
I don't think it is either, and I think there's a lot of fun matchups that you could do that would have made sense a couple years ago that make even more sense now. And I think for Martinez, this is just going to be a great learning experience for him, and I think he's going to go back to the drawing board, watch the tape, realize the mistakes that he made, and he's going to come back better than ever. And he proved that, even though he didn't fight very well, he proved that he could hang in there, against the guy, with the caliber as Aldo. So it has to count for something, and I think that for sure the biggest stock riser here of the whole of it was Jose Aldo, because he proved after 3.5 to 4 year layoff that he still got it and is still performing at the highest level, even though it's at an unnatural weight class. So he should be extremely proud of himself, and it was definitely a very, very exciting fight, and it was one that was one that I was happy to see. I correctly predicted Aldo to win. I didn't think he'd win in a decision. I think he'd get a quick finish, but it was definitely a very, very exciting and very well-rounded performance, if you will.
Yeah, and talking about stock risers after this card, I mean, Anthony Smith in the featured bout taking on Vitor Petrino.
Unreal.
I mean, that was crazy out of Anthony Smith. I mean, come on. Vitor Petrino was piecing him up on the feet for the first couple minutes, and he looks for a takedown out of nowhere for no reason either, because he probably would have won the fight if he kept it standing the way it was, and picks up Anthony Smith, but his head is wrapped up in that guillotine. He slams Smith down, and Smith is not letting go. I mean, come on, Anthony Smith. Guillotine win in 2 minutes against the undefeated Brazilian in Brazil. Got to give Anthony Smith his flowers here, because a lot of people counted him out, including me. I counted him out a little bit, even though I did say that I thought if there was going to be one big favorite to lose, it was going to be Vitor Petrino, just because of the inexperience and just the lack of showing anything in his last fight. But man, Anthony Smith really had an incredible win over a hometown guy.
He really did, and just the way that he did it was the most shocking and surprising part of it. I mean, if you would have told me that he would have submitted a guy of that caliber, given the losing streak or losing streak or hit or miss streak, if you will, that Smith had been on, I would have been very surprised. But I just thought that Petrino hadn't fought anyone at the level as Smith, which is why I took Smith to begin with. So I was super happy about that. I was just surprised that Petrino kind of let Smith play into his own game and ended up getting caught. So I mean, that's obviously a mistake. It's a bad look for Petrino. He's fighting in front of the Brazilian crowd. He's on that big winning streak. He's a guy that the UFC thinks they can build around, and now they're gonna have to rethink what they want to do with it, because this was a bad look for Petrino. And for Smith, he's still in the mix at 205. There's still a lot of questions as to what's going to happen at 205 at the top and what the UFC is going to do. So he's definitely very much in the mix. That's for sure.
Yeah, I like what you said, Pat. I think this is a legendary performance from Anthony Smith, one of the best of his career, maybe the best win of his career. First round submission, really flawless, didn't take any damage. And I was also one of the people that said that was a naysayer of Smith. On my best bet segment, I had Petrino by knockout. And, this is kind of infuriating from a gambling perspective as you're watching it, Petrino has Smith shelled up. He's taking shots. Now, Smith was landing leg kicks, but the size of Petrino as a physical athlete, it's going to take more than a couple leg kicks to really damage his lower base there. And he was damaging Smith with his hands, and then goes for a takedown that, he obviously is regretting. But that to me was one of the biggest mental errors I've seen from an undefeated prospect kind of coming up. I thought that he had that fight right where he wanted it. It was going exactly how his team probably had game planned the whole camp. I was really confused with what he did there, but he made a mistake, and Anthony Smith made him pay for it.
I always like to drop this fun fact whenever I can. Vitor Petrino's manager is Derek Brunson. No one knows that. It's a very little known fact. Vitor Petrino's manager is Derek Brunson. Yes.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yes, very little known, but it's a very cool thing to throw out there, considering Brunson was a top contender for years, and now he's got a guy under him like Petrino, who still a solid fighter, but needs to bounce back here. So we'll see what kind of matchup Derek Brunson cooks up for him.
What do you guys think of Anthony Smith, though? What do you believe is next for him? If this was in America, he might have rode off into the sunset with this finish win. Do you think that he's got a chance at another contender? Now, he's fought Ankalaev, he's fought Johnny Walker, he's fought Khalil Roundtree, all these guys that are ahead of him in the rankings. Is there anybody that you guys see him matched up against that you'd like to see up there?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I don't know what's next for Smith.
I don't know. Does he fight it? Does he fight in the rankings? Does he fight another young up and coming guy?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
he could rematch Johnny Walker, maybe.
I mean, I'm just gonna say it for fun. Give him Bogdan Guskov. Give us the mirror match. Why not? Give us the mirror match. Guskov just knocked out Ryan Spann, who was Anthony Smith's last win before this. Why not test a guy like Bogdan Guskov against Anthony Smith?
Would be very interesting, and people and what that would mean too also is the line would be skewed towards Guskov, considering what Guskov was able to do in his last fight, and it would be a huge betting trap. It would be a very interesting fight for sure.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have Michel Pereira doing a crazy backflip and somehow not getting DQ'd, not getting anything done to him. Kind of hit his shin a little bit, maybe on Ihor's head. I know the knee mostly landed to like the shoulder and neck area, but there was some recoil of Potieria's head that made me question where that really landed. We didn't get the best angles of it, but ends up getting a sub-minute actually, I'm pretty sure, against Potieria. And I mean, Michel Pereira at middleweight is a problem. Let's just all agree there. I mean,
that's for damn sure.
3 wins under 70 seconds in a row. Knocks out Andre Petrosky, subs Potieria, and he had a sub over Michel Oleksiejczuk. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't know how you can deny him a chance at the rankings at this point. I know he had the weight problems at 170. He missed weight against Wonderboy, and that was a whole big issue. But how do you deny this guy at this point from a spot in the rankings? I mean, he might even be ranked off of this win. He better fight someone ranked next. Like, I think he should fill in for Anthony Hernandez at UFC 302 and take on a guy like Roman Dolidze, because he's earned that right at this point. I mean, how much better do you have to look in these fights? I know the backflip was very dumb of him, and I'm not a fan of it. He has to stop doing the dumb stuff. But at the same time, I think he needs a ranking spot. I think he needs an opportunity to fight someone probably in the top 10. And I mean, Michel Pereira, he's always entertaining. He's always electric.
Yeah, this is 8 in a row. Oh, I'm sorry, Zan. You can go.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, I was saying, this is 8 in a row now for Michel Pereira, and I don't know whether it's his team that is kind of slow cooking him here and not getting him a step up in competition, or whether it's the UFC. But there is kind of have been a slow play for Pereira in his move up the rankings. Now, from the entertainment factor that you were talking about, he does bring new fans to the sport. I was sitting there watching the fight on Saturday night, and one of my good buddies' nephews was sitting there watching, and he just does the backflip, and he goes, "Oh my goodness!" And so he's bringing little kids, interest into the sport too with these things. But at the same time, he gets himself DQ'd against Diego Sanchez. He gets a point deducted and loses against Tristan Conley. He does make these mental errors at the top level that are going to cost him in a contender fight if he keeps doing them. So, there's a double-edged sword there with their entertainment value. He is bringing new eyes, but he also is kind of damaging his own chances. But yeah, I like him at 185 pounds. I think there's a lot of good matchups on the horizon for him. I like what you said against Roman Dolidze. I'd even like to see him fight a Marvin Vettori or someone like that. What did you think about this performance, Zan?
I mean, I thought it was awesome. I mean, I think he's one of the most exciting fighters in our sport today. I thought that Potieria would give him a little bit of a better fight, but Bird's a stud. He's a hard guy to take out, and he's definitely a hard guy to count out too. And as you guys just alluded to, if he stops with the mental errors, the sky's the limit for him. And the UFC just needs to keep giving him the matchups. And I think it was you, Pat, that just alluded to him. If he wanted to fight Roman Dolidze, that would be very, very interesting. I'd like to see that. I don't know if he could win that fight, but he could, at the very least, he's taking the distance and give him a war. So, he's definitely a prospect that I don't think people are having their eye as much on as they should. But definitely, that performance told you anything. He's there for the long haul, and he's there to stay in that division. That's for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of prospects, I mean, in this last fight on the main card, Borralho, man. I mean, this kid's good. This kid's good. I've thought he was since he entered the UFC, but man, like, he was smart enough. He showed so much IQ in this fight. He was smart enough not to engage Paul Craig on the ground. He saw what Paul Craig did to Jamal Hill. He saw what he did to Magomed Ankalaev, and he said, "You know what? I'm not even going to risk going on the ground with him. I'm going to take him out where I know he can get taken out." And he decided to stand on the feet, didn't play the game, and ended up just breaking Craig down and just cooked him. Just cooked him in that second round. I mean, he put him down, put him out. I mean, Borralho was known for his ground game. He doesn't really have too many finishes in the UFC, but the ones he has are submission wins. This is his first straight clean KO in the UFC, and what a way to do it. I mean, Paul Craig isn't a slouch. He's a slouch on the feet a little bit, but he isn't a slouch to fight in general. And Borralho showed incredible fight IQ to just stay away and keep at distance, and ended up just landing some big shots that put Craig down and out.
Yeah, and the thing that really impresses me the most with Borralho, you alluded to it a little bit, is his intelligence. I think that's the scariest part about him. He may have been even better than Paul Craig on the ground, but he elected not to go to it because that's where Paul's strengths were. I mean, that's just so smart, ahead of his time, from where he's at as a prospect. That's something you see out of champions that are making their defenses. And, so Kai Borralho, he also, manages these guys and trains these guys at the Fighting Nerds. So he's involved with the sport. He loves the sport. And he's somebody who's going to be moving up the rankings in very short order. Yeah,
I mean, this kid's special to do what he did to Paul Craig's. Someone who's very, very unorthodox, and everything that he does was just shocking. And I think if people didn't know that this kid was before this fight, they know who he is now. He can co-main event a fight night card. He can main event a fight night card. He's someone in Brazil that he should build around and put him in one of these bigger international shows moving forward. He's someone that's very, very exciting.
And he's a guy along with Michel Pereira that I feel needs a ranking spot. If not a ranking spot, then a top 10 guy in his next fight. These are two guys who I really feel are part of the future of Brazilian MMA when it comes to just entertainment, when it comes to just great high-level prospects. I think Borralho fits in with all the top Brazilian prospects right now. And just a quick shout-out to his teammate at Fighting Nerds, Mauricio Ruffi, who Dana White called basically Conor McGregor in his UFC debut. He had a crazy knockout. I mean, I love that Fighting Nerds gym, and they are just breeding some amazing talent out there.
No doubt about it.
When we look at the middleweight division right now, guys, they have some of the best prospects in all of the sport. We've got Pereira, Bo Nickel, Khamzat Chimaev, and Borralho sitting up there and are not in the top 10 rankings. So these are guys that are going to be making a statement here in very short order with the UFC, and I can't wait to see these guys matched up against one another.
Yeah, we could see a lot of changes coming to middleweight within the near future, seriously, because there's a lot of upcoming guys that I feel at least could take out these guys in the rankings.
Yeah, I think there's going to be heavy turnover, like you're saying.
Yep.
All right. Well, that was essentially a wrap up of the UFC 301 main card. So I guess before we move over and transition into some other stuff, I guess what would you guys think in terms of a grade for this card and overall, given that it was kind of a World Series pay per view in Rio? How would you guys rate it?
I was gonna say a 6, but I'm gonna say a 7. I think that there's a little bit of a hangover effect from UFC 300. The main event was a good fight. I thought that Jose Aldo and Martinez could have been, a more entertaining contest. I think that had a little bit to do with the output of Martinez being so low rather than Aldo. I think Martinez just kind of didn't show up for that one, but Petrino and Smith, that was very unexpected finish and, something that caught our attention. But overall, I'll say I give this card a 7.
I was going to say 7.5 out of 10. So I'm right on board with you, Brett. I didn't love the fact that there were so many heavy favorites that actually looked like heavy favorites on this card, like Yasmin Lucindo. Just that fight with Carolina Kovalevich just wasn't competitive at all. Like there were some fights like that where it just wasn't really competitive at all, but still not the worst watch. So I can't say it was, too high, but there were a lot of really fun fights, fun finishes. So I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10.
I'm gonna go and be a little more conservative and give it a 7 as well. I thought it was overall a good card, but I think the main card over delivered and then some after a bit of an underwhelming prelim card. So just to give you guys a little bit of a run through before we get into Canelo, both or all three of us, Pat, myself, and Tom did really well. Pat went 11-2 when this card, as did Tom, and I went 10-3, which means our current standings look like this. Pat is 117 wins, Tom is 114, and I finally cracked the 100 win mark at 103, 83 and 3s. That's where our current UFC picks tracker stands going into UFC St. Louis. But now we're going to be moving from Brazil back to the United States. We're on the same night. We had a boxing match. We had Canelo Alvarez taking on Jaime Munguia. He knocked down Jaime Munguia in the 4th round, and that was a real turning point with that uppercut there. He was able to retain his undisputed super middleweight championship. What did you guys think of the fight overall? I'm assuming both of you guys saw it, and did you think that Canelo was on a different level, or did you think that Jaime Munguia just kind of fought the best he could, but knew that he was running into a completely different individual than guys that he had fought before? What do you think?
Yeah, I liked what you said about a new level for Canelo. This fight really reminded me of Canelo versus Floyd Mayweather when Canelo was the 23-year-old fighter fighting the face of boxing. He was a little bit, too inexperienced, didn't know when to get to Floyd Mayweather or how he could get to Floyd Mayweather. Munguia in this one kind of fought Canelo in his own style, sat in the pocket, traded shot for shot. Canelo had more power and put him down there early. But Munguia is a good fighter. He's very young. He's someone that came into this undefeated. I believe he had 38 professional wins coming in. So, he's somebody who's going to be on a track for a world title here in the future.
He had 44.
44. Okay. Yeah. I knew that he had, well over 35 wins there and was undefeated. But he looked good to me. It just looked like he was a little too young, a little too inexperienced on the night. And Canelo was the more polished fighter with more punching power.
So
Pat,
for
what
me,
did you think of the fight? Did you watch it?
Yeah. I caught bits of it. I didn't get to watch the whole thing because I was trying to go back and forth between that and UFC 301. But
okay.
Munguia came out hard. I mean, he won two of those first 3 rounds, maybe even all 3, depending on how you look at it. I thought he won 2, but I mean, Munguia came out hard, and it was the same story in most of the rounds. He came out to start every round hard, and then he slowed down as the rounds progressed, and Canelo did what he needed to do to just take those rounds away from him. Canelo's an experienced vet, and I expected him to win here, but I also expected Munguia to put up a good fight, and I really do think he did. I think he did a solid job at fighting a guy like Canelo. The thing is here, I just think the level of competition that Munguia has fought in the past compared to a guy like Canelo is just, I feel like it's only going to make him better fighting guys on this level. I feel like he is a potential future Canelo in a sense. I feel like he really could get to that level at one point. He fights so often. He has a lot of wins over solid guys, just not guys on Canelo's level. And I feel like this fight is only going to help him learn and grow the experience needed to potentially be a massive name in boxing for years to come.
Well said. And, I thought that this fight was great too. I thought it lived up to all expectation. And I just think Canelo is at the height of his career. He's clearly the best pound for pound boxer in the world. Some maybe have him at number 2. I still think he's the best pound for pound boxer in the world. But I think this is an experience that McGee needed. He's going to be able to regain his confidence, win a couple more fights, and we'll see what the landscape of the super middleweight division looks like in a couple of years. But I think he's someone where he's still so young in his career. He's still a very, very highly touted prospect, if you will. He still hasn't scratched the surface of how good he really could be, and I think everyone around him knows the potential that he has, and to even in a few rounds with Canelo, you have to give him all the credit in the world for that. So I was very, very pleased with this fight, and I was glad to admit and say that I was able to watch both UFC and Canelo simultaneously. It was pretty great. So I have no complaints either. So yeah. And I have to ask you, it's true. This is a little bit more of an unrelated question surrounding this. But if you guys were to predict, do you think that the Canelo Munguia buy rates were better, or do you think that the UFC 301 buy rates were better? Because I would tend to lean that boxing might have outdid UFC this past weekend. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Yeah, I guarantee they shattered them when you look at the Mexican audience on Cinco de Mayo. I don't think they got 300,000 pay-per-view buys in America for that card. I'll bet you they got 300,000 buys in Mexico City.
Yeah, I'm right there with Brett.
For damn sure. All right, hey guys, we're gonna move back into more some news items here. So on the UFC India UFC 301 post-fight show, Dvalishvili did an exclusive interview with the UFC broadcast partner and revealed some pretty interesting news that his next fight could potentially be against Sean O'Malley at UFC 306 at the Spear for O'Malley's bantamweight title. However, O'Malley said in an Instagram story, which has since been deleted, that even though that Merab is the next fight, he has not been told potentially a date or where the fight could be. But what do you think of Merab's comments surrounding this? And do you think that he'll eventually get the fight that he wants? Because I do. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think he gets the fight that he wants. I think he's well deserving of this fight. He's the next in line. He's been waiting because Aljamain Sterling was, the champion, and he was kind of sitting in the on-deck circle there, so to speak. And, this is a great stylistic matchup. This is a combat sambo world champion versus a talented athletic striker with knockout power. This is what, as fight fans, we love to watch here, the clashing styles. And, here's the thing, though. He's going to have to find a way to get inside on O'Malley that Aljamain Sterling didn't or was unable to find a way to do. Now, Sterling did win that first round, but he was kind of lost in space there in that second round when he got knocked out in between going for whether it was a strike or a takedown attempt and got caught with a big punch. Merab is shorter than him, and it's going to be even harder for him to get inside O'Malley's length. But I'm really excited for this matchup. I hope it's the next one up and coming, and I can't wait for it.
Very well said, Brett. Very well said. And I personally, I know there's like conflicting reports here about, O'Malley saying that he wants to do it, but it's not done. And then Merab saying it's happening. Personally, I've heard of a different main event for this card. That's not Grasso Shevchenko either. So from what I'm hearing, this fight is not done by any means. So I'm not sure where Merab was getting that from. I don't know if maybe he talked to the UFC recently and that's what they told him, but it's definitely the next fight. No doubt it's the next fight. I just don't know if it'll be happening at the Sphere in UFC 306. And if it does, I mean, that would be amazing, especially with what I've heard is going to be the main event. So we'll see what actually ends up happening here. But I agree with Brett when it comes to the analysis of the fight. Merab's going to have to get in on O'Malley, and I think it's going to be a lot harder than people think it will.
Oh, so I have to ask, who can you please state what an ink link would be, or is that top secret information?
It's an expected title fight, but it's one that's not confirmed yet. That's all I can say.
Okay.
If O'Malley's in the co-main, it's got to be Jones-Stipe in the return.
Mm-mm.
No.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's a closer weight class to O'Malley and Merab. That's all I can say.
Huh.
Oh, yeah. I think I know where you're going with it. Yeah. It's obvious when you think about it for a second. But anyway, my analysis on this. This is great. If this fight happens, the buildup is going to be hilarious. These two guys are characters. I bet you that Merab is going to say some things to O'Malley that O'Malley doesn't like, and vice versa. If this isn't the next fight, I'll be pretty disappointed. But if it is, I think the fans who are going to buy tickets to this fight are going to be super entertained because these are the two best bantamweights in the world, and this is the fight that needs to happen. And it almost feels like a monkey is going to be lifted off from Merab's back because he's been asking for this title shot for what feels like forever. So hopefully he gets it. So
yeah, agreed. He needs this title shot. I mean, it's well overdue.
Is Merab on a 9-fight win streak, or what is he exactly on? 9 or 10?
I think it's 10 at this point.
I
No?
think it's 10 in a row. Yeah, it's 10 in a row.
Yeah, that might be the longest streak in UFC history without getting a title shot.
I think
It's up there.
I think Leon Edwards is more. He has like 12, I think. He had 11 or 12.
Leon was an undefeated streak technically because he had the no contest with Bilal as well.
Yeah.
So his win streak got broken up by a no contest, but I still consider it the same. I kind of just erased the no contest out of there. But yeah, Merab is on a 10-fight winning streak coming into this.
For sure. And as with that being said, moving over to more potential fight news is the highly anticipated TBD return of UFC heavyweight champion Jon Jones. He was answering fans' questions. Us X formerly Twitter over the weekend, pretty much explaining, what's next for him, and what he kind of thinks of the divisions and what he thought of UFC 301. And a question was proposed, which allowed Jones to really encapsulate the ways in which he was feeling regarding his next fight. And even though it seems penciled in that it's going to be him versus Stipe later this year, he actually said in a reply to a fan that potentially he prefers a matchup with Alex Pereira over Tom Aspinall as the fight after Stipe. So I guess I'm going to go to both of you first before I give my analysis, but I think Jones versus Pereira is a fight everybody would want to see.
Yeah, it's the fight everybody wants to see, but is it the right one that the UFC should make? And as you're looking at it right now, Jon Jones is going to have to rehab from the surgery he had. We're looking at 3 months here probably on the minimum for when Jones is going to return. Now, when Pereira wants to enter himself into this sweepstakes for the heavyweight title, Aspinall's been without an opponent for this entire time. To me, this is simple. This is a semifinal. Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall. Let's have Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Put it on the same card when he returns. And now you have clarity at the heavyweight division that we haven't had before. I know that defending the interim title isn't something that everybody loves to see. It's not been done very often, if at all. But I think Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall, the winner of that takes on Jon Jones after he presumably beats Stipe. You never know. No disrespect to Stipe. He's a legend and can win that fight. But,
right.
I want to see him fight Tom Aspinall, the guy who has the belt.
So I agree with Brett there, but I just have a question for you guys. How does Jon Jones move up to heavyweight and he's still asking to fight middleweights? I mean, come on with this. Really? We watched him fight Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith at light heavyweight. He needs to fight guys in his weight class. Like I understand he fought Cyril Gane at heavyweight. Yes, that was a great win, great performance. But
do you think it's because of the stylistic advantage in the fight? Do you think it's because he knows he can take him down and submit him just like he did Cyril Gane? He's not the physical athlete.
Of course.
Yes. And that's all it is to me. It's strategic. It's not him wanting more money or fame or anything like that. No. It's an easier fight for more money. It makes sense.
Yeah, no, I that's exactly what I think it is. I just think it's funny that we see Jon Jones move up to heavyweight and now there's still a middleweight in the picture for him to fight. Like, how does this work? How are we doing this? Because Tom Aspinall, he's the interim champion. he deserves his title shot. I mean, he doesn't have an opponent because I'm guessing not a lot of guys are accepting a fight with him. I mean, he said multiple times that Gon won't fight him. So that's the thing. It's like, how do you have an interim champion and then just completely overlook him and say, no, I want the light heavyweight champion? It's like,
yeah,
I get it. Like, I know the cool, like, you know, champion versus champion, it's always great. And it's not a fight I would mind seeing. I don't have a problem with Jones versus Pereira. But when you have a guy like Aspinall sitting there with an interim belt that he clearly earned, you got to give him the fight, especially after all the face-offs, after all the this, after all the trash talk online. I don't know how you're just completely forgetting about Tom Aspinall in this picture.
He's in his prime too, and you're putting him on ice. He's sitting there in the best years of his career, not fighting. So I understand the UFC's hesitancy, like you were saying with the Surreal Gon matchup. If Gon somehow won that fight, you couldn't go throw him to John Jones again and get some big pay-per-view because of, you know, obviously how that first fight went. But, you know, with Pereira, I'd like to see him fight Tom Aspinall if Aspinall wants to stay active.
And I don't know if you guys – oh, sorry.
Oh, I mean, I think in this whole conundrum, the easiest thing to do is the logical thing to do, which the UFC isn't going to do. What the UFC should have done from the very beginning is they should have eliminated. This is just my opinion, and this is no disrespect to Stipe because I love him. He's one of my favorite fighters ever. But once they knew that Aspinall became the interim heavyweight champion, it was a no-brainer. That was the fight that should have been made right away. You know. Stipe was the one that took 3 years off for the reasons in which he did. And I think sometimes there just comes a point to where, you know, they have to move on. If they would have moved on from this fight, the heavyweight division would have had clarity and, you know, we could have had 3 or 4 heavyweight title fights by now. But instead we're stuck in this bind because, you know, we want these legacy fights to happen that, you know, if they don't happen, it's going to tarnish the division forever. I don't believe in any of that. I believe in the best matchups possible. And I understand what you were saying, Pat, about, you know, Jones should be fighting people in his weight class. At this point, given Jones is his stature, he should be able to do whatever the heck he wants. He should be able to fight whoever he wants. He should be able to fight for the tournaments that he wants, and he should be able to fight for the titles that he wants. I don't have a problem with it. That's what I think.
Did you guys see that John Jones did get caught slipping up on Twitter though? He asked everyone on Twitter if they would rather Pereira or Tom Aspinall, and then Caposa, a very well-known MMA Twitter guy, replied saying that he needs to fight Aspinall, and John Jones hid the reply.
He hid it, yeah.
not the right person to hide a reply on because everyone knows Caposa, and everyone found that out very quickly. I don't know how you're going to ask a question like that and then just try to ignore like one of the biggest minds in MMA telling you.
Yeah, I don't know the guy. I've never seen him, but he seems to be really intelligent, and I like his tweets a lot.
He keeps himself hidden, so I don't know if you will see him. But yeah, no, I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, he's super well known, and that's definitely not a surprise. I'm not saying Caposa was looking for attention there, but that's very, very interesting. And yeah, I mean, one tweet could change the whole direction of what the promotion decides to do, and you never know. I just think what the UFC is going to end up doing is this. I think they're going to give Tom Aspinall what he feels he deserves, which is a main or co-main event in his home country of England. It's gonna be against somebody, and you gotta hope and pray that he wins that fight and gets out of that fight unscathed. And they're probably gonna do what they've been planning for 2 years, which is to make the Jones Stipe fight. And there's either gonna be one retirement, a double retirement, or no retirement. And then the UFC by 2025 is gonna go back to the drawing board. But if you guys didn't catch this by now, I'm saying all of these things that must happen because they put themselves in this position to where they feel like they can't divert away from the plan, and this is the UFC's own fault. And they're the ones that caused this, and now they're in the mess. That's what I think.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I can agree.
All right, hey, well, moving on to more news and notes, and this is something that we kind of touched on a week ago. It's the follow-up story. We had Ihor Potieria and Alexander Volkanovski both coming out and disputing Joe Rogan's claim that he made on the Joe Rogan MMA podcast a week ago, saying that these two were ready and were ready to fight at UFC 305 both men are saying that no, that it isn't true, and it seems like the UFC could potentially be going in a different direction, maybe either away from this fight or a totally different date. What do you guys think of this whole situation? Do you think that Joe Rogan was in the right to just drop that? Do you think he was spewing rumors? What do you is because Tom and I touched on it a week ago, and I brought up a good point that maybe Ilya decided on behalf of Alexander Volkanovski to turn down the fight because Volk continues to keep fighting and losing. There's a lot of different variables that's running this story. So I'm going to start with you, Brett. Do you think that Joe Rogan was in the right to do this, or do you think he was wrong?
So I'll be transparent here. I have not seen the Joe Rogan Max Holloway podcast yet. But are we saying that Joe Rogan stated that Ilya Topuria turned down a matchup against Volkanovski? That's what we're saying?
That's yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see
that's how I understand it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Now, not having seen the episode, if that is what happened, I don't think that's realistic because Topuria just handled Volk. You know what I'm saying? Why would he turn down a fight with a guy that he just finished and knocked out in dramatic fashion? That doesn't make much sense to me. But I think that, he wants that matchup with Max Holloway. Maybe if he did turn it down, it's because he knows he wants to fight Max in Spain or at one of these big cards. So, Topuria's got his pick of the litter right now. He's the champion. He's one of the most devastating finishers we have in the UFC and a very exciting guy internationally as well. So he's going to choose his next opponent.
What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I think, all right, Joe Rogan knows what he's talking about. I'm not going to act like he doesn't. I think he was just talking out of his ass a little bit here. I mean, we know Joe Rogan kind of talks talks some BS sometimes.
Loosely.
Yeah, very loosely sometimes. So not to say that he didn't hear this from someone that's very reputable. I just don't think it was ever the truth. I don't know why Ilya would turn down the Volkanovski fight. If anything, Volkanovski should be the one.
That's what I'm saying.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but why? But why would Ilya have the authority to make any decisions considering that he just won the title? He should be accepting whatever the UFC is offering him. He's in no position to turn down stuff yet.
Well, it doesn't seem like he has that mindset. So that's the only thing that I would agree with Rogan's part is it seems like Ilya does feel like he has the ability to do whatever he wants. And honestly, with the amount of options he has, I don't necessarily disagree. If there weren't options, I wouldn't agree. But he has Brian Ortega, he has Volkanovski, he has Max Holloway. He has options here. And that's my only thing is I could see, Topuria choosing whatever he wants to do. But I just don't understand why he would be the one turning down a Volk fight. If anything, he'd probably look at it as another free win.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think whatever ends up happening, the fight that makes the most sense is Topuria versus Holloway, especially after what Holloway did to Gaethje, and as well considering that Volk hasn't won a fight in almost a year and keeps getting brutally knocked out and came back with it too quickly. This to me seems like a no-brainer. They just need a date and an event, and that's it. I think it's a super easy solution. Bro, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna ask you, Zan, do you know how long of a medical suspension Volkanovski got after that fight?
I don't know.
I didn't hear. But I have to assume after being knocked out twice in 6 months that they gave him at least a 3 to 4 month suspension.
I would think that's about on par.
Yeah,
I would say that's about it. The Sphere sounds good for Max Holloway versus Ilya. Just saying, it sounds like a good card. Sounds like a good main event for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like publicly that there was anything that listed his medical suspension. The last medical suspension that was reported was over a year ago after he lost to Makhachev. So it's been a while.
Gotcha.
So good question. All right, if we're shifting briefly away from the UFC, we're going to move over to some Bellator news. It seems like Cedric Doumbé is going to be coming back into the fold here. He will be returning at Bellator Paris later in this month, given that Pat, I guess, is our main PFL guy here. Pat, Well, what do you make of this news? Do you think this is too quick of a turnaround for Doumbé, or do you think this is perfect? What do you think?
I mean, he took virtually no damage in that fight against Baki. I mean, other than damage to the bottom of his foot due to a splinter. But I mean, no, I think it's a fine turnaround. I think if anything, it could have even been quicker. But I don't see a problem with it, and I just think it's really crazy how he was booked against Derek Anderson. News broke, and the day after, Anderson rips his foot apart in a motorcycle accident. I just think that's so unfortunate, and I just feel bad for the promotion at that point because you book a fight, you finally announce it, and you immediately have to cancel it because of an injury from one of the fighters. And it sucks. Straight up, it sucks. But they got Jaleel Willis to step in. I mean, Doumbé isn't going to have a problem finding opponents. There's going to be a lot of guys willing to fight him. And
I don't think so either. I think you're right.
I think it's a great matchup. I think him versus Jaleel Willis is a good fight. It's a good like stepping stone for Doumbé to see where he's at after the loss. You know, he's taken losses before in kickboxing, not many, but he's taken losses before, and this one wasn't even due to anything the opponent did necessarily. So I really think that I think that'll be interesting to gauge where Doumbé is at right now.
Bro, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm really happy for Jaleel Willis and his head coach, Brian Wall. It kind of looked like they were left on the outside looking in after this Bellator PFL merger. He now gets to slide in against Cedric Doumbé and in a fight that's really going to be maybe the most eyeballs that he's had on him in his career. So this is going to be a good opportunity for him. I'm excited for this fight. I was there when Jaleel Willis fought Ramazan Kurmagomedov. That one didn't really go his way, but Jaleel's a great fighter and a good competitor. So I'm really happy for this matchup. But I have to say, Pat and Zan, how surprised were you that they didn't rematch him with Baki after how close that fight was? The splinter there, it might have been an even fight. The control of Baki was looking good, but at the same time, Cedric Doumbé was getting stuff off on the feet. Were you surprised they didn't match those guys back up?
Very surprised.
I'd be more surprised if there weren't heavy rumors of Baki being in negotiations with the UFC. It seems like Baki took that fight and is trying to elevate himself to the next level with that kind of matchup. I mean, he looked good in the fight. Both of them looked good in the fight. It was a very close fight up until the injury. So I think that Baki is basically on his way to the UFC, and it would have surprised me more had it not seemed like he's probably going to be in the UFC for his next fight.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, given that piece of information, I guess the less of a surprise that the rematch didn't happen, but still, it just felt like there was unfinished business there. It would have been cool to see, but Willis is definitely a tough opponent, and it's one that Doumbé doesn't want to take lightly at all, and I can't believe that fight is already next week because it feels like this fight snuck up on us. So we'll see how it goes. Who are you guys taking in that? Just really quick. Who do you guys?
Doumbé by knockout.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Doumbé by knockout. I think that this was kind of a hand-picked stylistic matchup here. Willis isn't the greatest grappler in the world, but maybe his experience in the grappling room will just outweigh Doumbé's, and he can get him to the ground. We saw what was that girl's name? Abigail Montas beat Clarissa Shields, who was a great striker. So, and Montas wasn't known as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt or anything, but she was experienced enough in grappling to get that fight to the ground. So maybe Jaleel's got a little bit of a advantage more so than the odds makers think.
That'll be interesting. We'll preview all that fight and so much more next week when we go and preview Bellator Paris. That's a week from this Saturday, I'm pretty sure. But and you getting back to a few more small news and notes before we move right into the previews to wrap up the show. He had a retirement in this past week. We had Matt Brown, a long-time UFC competitor, former Ultimate Fighter competitor as well, retired after a very his career in the UFC. Made his debut in 2007 and just retired this past weekend and in his final fight in the UFC in very impressive fashion. Just briefly, what is your favorite Brown memory? What will you miss the most about him? Because the one fight that sticks out to me is Eric Silva for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you brought it up, the Eric Silva matchup. Matt Brown was on a huge winning streak during that time. Also his fights with Robbie Lawler, he he was all action all the time. A great way for him to go out with that knockout over Court McGee. That was great. He goes in the way he came in. The knockout leader in welterweight for UFC's history. So congratulations to Matt Brown. I know that he probably would have wanted to get a win in Columbus 2 fights ago, and he might have actually called it a career there, but he lost a split decision that night. I don't know if he thought maybe they weren't going to be coming back to the Midwest very soon and it was time to hang it up. But great career for Matt Brown. Many memories, many great fights, in all action all the time.
Yeah, in terms of an overall fight, the Eric Silva fight was amazing. But, I mean, come on. There's no better Matt Brown moment than that Diego Sanchez knockout. That elbow that he landed against Diego, that just put him out, man.
Yeah.
Put him out. And that wasn't even young Matt Brown. That was back in 2017. He was almost on the tail end of his career at that point. So just the fact that he was still doing stuff like that so late on in his career is kind of just the epitome of Matt Brown. He's always been great, always been entertaining, and he's going to finish a fight. He's going to finish the fight. So love it.
Yeah, very well said.
Diego Lima, but
right.
That was a great one too.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, definitely a lot of memories that stuck out there for the Immortal One, and he's definitely going to be a welterweight that people are going to miss for sure, even though we didn't end up winning any UFC world titles or anything like that. And actually, we're somewhat taking a dig at him, considering that in his tweets after making this announcement, he's choosing to not use the word retirement, and that he's moving into the next phase of his life. So congratulations to him and all of his success. And I think one of his fights, maybe if not two, is going to go into the fight wing at some point in the UFC Hall of Fame in the next few years, because he absolutely deserves it. So it was a very, very good career, and I'm happy to see that he went out on a win and that he's doing what he wants to do. It's awesome to see. All right, we also had another not necessarily retirement. We also had an induction this past week, and we had former UFC light heavyweight champion Shogun Rua was announced as the final member of the UFC Hall of Fame class. This was a no-brainer, doing it in Brazil. The video package was awesome. Who knew that a Shogun Hall of Fame announcement was going to happen at some point? It was only just a matter of when. And I mean, this one just encapsulates, how awesome his era of pride was. And I'm excited for the induction ceremony, because I think that if you talk to almost every MMA fan in the world, I'd say 99.9% of them probably don't have a single bad thing to say about Shogun, because he was that well loved. What did you guys think of the announcement, and are you looking forward to seeing him get inducted in late June? Because I certainly am.
Yeah, I'm a huge Shogun Rua fan. His 2005 year when he won that Grand Prix in Pride was impressive. Stopped Quentin Jackson, stopped Alistair Overeem. He's got finish wins over some of the biggest names in the sport and other UFC Hall of Famers. So, it was well-deserved for him. Knocked out Lyoto Machida to win the title, and then lost the belt to the greatest of all time in John Jones. He had a legendary career. He kind of lost the belt to John Jones with that knee against the fence, the same way he beat Rampage back in Pride. So, he's a great fighter, and, happy for him and glad to see him get inducted into the Hall of Fame. Well-deserved.
You said it well, bro. I mean, he just became champion at the worst time, because John Jones was on the rise, and it was a new legend rising at that point. And I mean, Shogun, like you said, Rampage, Overeem, he beat Nogueira, he beat Kevin Randleman, he beat Mark Coleman, he beat Machida, he beat Forrest Griffin. I mean, this guy beat them all. Shogun beat all the legends, at those heavier weight classes. So when you just look at his career, I mean, Mark Coleman and Chuck Liddell too. I mean, come on. Like, he beat everyone. So when it just comes to Shogun, it's hard not to have just the utmost amount of respect for him and just love for what he's done for the sport and his career. I mean, it was a very well-deserved induction into the Hall of Fame. And great to happen at UFC in Brazil.
And of course, he was involved in one of the greatest fights of all time, which was the first 5-9 title main event in UFC history against Dan Henderson. And I think everybody points to that as the really defines Shogun's toughness and heart. So I'm super happy for him. I'm happy to see that he will be getting inducted, and I'm sure this speech will be one to watch for sure. Just really quick as we're wrapping up the show, we're now going to move into UFC St. Louis. There's no other card of this upcoming weekend. Brett and I are going to be there. It is going to be Derek Lewis versus Rodrigo Nascimento in the main event. I'm super excited. I've been waiting for this card since the day it was announced. As Brett, since you and I are going to this card, I'm going to start with you. How excited are you that you're going to be there in person for this main event, and who do you got?
I'm so excited to be here for this card. If we're going to talk, are we going to talk a little bit about the prelims and the other matchups here in a minute?
Just the top two, I think.
Just the top two. Yeah. So I'm excited to see Derek Lewis. I don't think this fight's going 5 rounds. We have striker versus grappler here. Nascimento, 6 subs on his record. Derek Lewis, knockout leader in the UFC's heavyweight history. Heavy hands. I think Derek Lewis might get back on track in this matchup. But what I'm excited about for most guys is 6'7" prospect Robelis Despain on the prelims taking on Waldo Costa Cortez. Despain broke the UFC's reach record at 87 inches. Taekwondo bronze medalist. Average fight time of 15 seconds. Got a knockout win in 18 seconds in his UFC debut. Has knockout wins as low as 4 and 3 seconds on his record. So I can't wait to see this guy in person. He's a freak of nature.
Oh, I'm excited to see him too, but back to the main event. I think this fight ends in one of two ways. I think that Lewis viciously knocks out Nascimento before the third, or Nascimento wins a very lackluster and one-sided decision. I'm going to see Nascimento to go the distance and get the win. I think that Lewis catches him, but doesn't do enough to knock him out. I'm gonna go conservative, Brett. How about you? I'm gonna see Lewis to lose this fight. What do you think?
You think Lewis loses?
I do, yeah. I think he loses. I think he loses the decision.
Here's the thing with me. We just saw Derek Lewis fight Jailton Almeida. Almeida is known as being one of the best submission specialists in the division. And that fight went 25 minutes. Derek Lewis found a way to not get submitted and was in some really bad spots in that situation. I don't think Nascimento has the gas tank that Almeida does to go 5 rounds. And I also don't think he's as experienced in his jiu-jitsu enough to finish Derek Lewis off after what I just saw with his fight, his last fight. So, yeah, I think Derek Lewis keeps this fight on the feet, and it might be a devastating knockout. What about you, Pat? How do you see this one?
Really quick, who do you got?
I mean, this fight to me personally has Derek Lewis TKO 2 written all over it. I mean, Nascimento's just skated by. 2 of his last 3 fights are split decision wins. He got knocked out in 45 seconds by Chris Daukaus, and we saw what Derek Lewis did to him. I mean, Nascimento's not a bad fighter by any means. I just think it's going to be a tale of like it was with Lewis versus De Lima, basically. De Lima was fighting good guys, kind of skating by them a bit, good grappler, good overall fighter. And then Lewis just took him out because he wasn't used to fighting that high level of competition that Lewis is. And I think this is going to be the same result. I mean, I think Lewis knocks him out here.
All right, and just moving very quickly to the co-main event, we got Joaquin Buckley taking on Nurzel and Rosable. This was a late addition to the UFC St. Louis card. Buckley got what he wanted. This only ends one way, in my opinion. That's a very vicious Buckley knockout in his hometown. Do you guys agree with that, or are you guys going the other way? What do you guys think?
If Ruzabov makes weight, now we were talking, and this is going to be his first fight in the UFC at 170 pounds here. If he makes weight, no problem on the scale. Ruzabov is actually my underdog of the week in this matchup. 6'5", his length at middleweight got him wins over knockout artists like Bruno Ferreira. Now moving down, I think that length is going to be a real problem. If the speed and timing isn't there because of the weight drop, that could be a significant issue for Ruzabov, and maybe Buckley does get it done, like you're saying. I think the weight cut is really the biggest thing to look at in this matchup for me before I make a prediction in it.
Okay. So for me personally, I think Buckley struggles with long, rangy strikers. And I think that's exactly what Ruzibov has shown he is in the UFC. We saw what happened against Nasruddin Imavov. We saw what happened against Alessio Di Chirico. We saw what happened against Kevin Holland. Buckley has a problem finding and getting inside the range against tall, lengthy guys like this. And I really think that he's going to have problems with it against Ruzibov. I'm with Brett here. Give me the underdog in Ruzi Boev for a knockout win. I could see Buckley winning for sure, but I struggle to see him getting in the range needed.
Yeah. Ruzabov hasn't lost since 2019 either.
Interesting. So I'm the one wolf who's taking Buckley to end that winning streak of Ruziboyev. Very interesting. So that's going to do it for episode 82 of the MMA Outsiders presented by Playback. We thank you so much again for tuning in. We were able to pack in so much in about an hour time span. So again, we just want to remind you that episode 82 is presented by Playback, which is this: watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together, and you can join our community right now by going to playback.tv/ETV network to find out more, including our live stream schedule, which includes a boatload of NBA playoff games that are going to be taking place all across our channel. So stay tuned for that and so much more. And again, you can follow the MMA Outsiders at MMA Outsiders ETV, and you can follow the network the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, and that'll do it for episode 82. For myself, for Brett Cagle to my right, and for Pat Dan and down below, we thank you guys again for listening. We hope you guys tune in next week for more action on both the boxing and UFC front. So we hope to see you guys soon.